All right. So, plan for right now is to go over the unit project, the unit 5 project. Which, if you go to current unit in code, you will see. Just a second. Okay, you'll see that there are the only lesson accessible or visible is lesson 17, and that's on purpose because lessons 13 through 17 are all the same and they all just have one bubble and whatever. So just to avoid any sort of confusion, it is all just going to be done in lesson 17, which when you get there, you will see that actually, let me make sure before we'll go to it in a second. You'll see that it is empty. Okay, just like the rest of the projects. Not sure what that was. Yeah, just to make sure I'm not going to erase the work I've been doing for the last hour. I'm trying to solve a problem that you may come up to shortly. All right, so either way, let's take a look at the calendar spreadsheet. You'll see the familiar planning guide documents. You can go ahead and make a copy of it. This is the document you will hand in to the appropriate assignment on Canvas. And should look pretty familiar. It's a combination rubric, step-by-step planning situation. And no, that's not the right button. So let's say, look, all right, project description. 3 parts to the project, 3 separate assignment portions. The app itself, this planning guide, and the written response, which the last 2 are both documents that you will hand in to Canvas. Okay, app requirements, 3 screens. Okay, multi-screen project. It's not that difficult. You shouldn't have to work too hard to fit this into your final plan because you'll have some sort of, well, we'll talk about the general situation with lists, but you'll have some sort of output and it's easy to match that with like a welcome screen, a process screen, and an output screen, and it's not that hard. All right, so multi-screen app, you need to use a data set in a meaningful way towards the program's purpose. Okay, we've spent a fair amount of time using the data tab in App Lab, and you need to use a data set to do it there. Okay, if you were to, well, we'll go to it in a second. We'll work on deciding what app is right for you. Excuse me, what data set is right for you in a second. Let's get through the other requirements. With that data set, you will be accessing the event lists, the get column situation. You need to map, reduce, or filter whatever one you're doing in a meaningful way. Okay, filter is the one we're doing the most of. Mapping is just like finding the lowest or highest, and filtering and reducing is returning one item from that list. So pretty much going to be doing some sort of filtering and returning the result of the filtering. You'll include variables, functions, conditionals, lists, and loops. It is hard. I can't imagine successfully doing any sort of sorting without those things. Almost every time we did any sort of loop, we would have a conditional. That's sort of the point. You go through every item in a list and check something. Okay, loop, conditionals, super easy. And so commenting functions is not something we've done a ton of, and we've talked about it a little bit, but the commenting functions is just putting little annotations, little notes in your software or in your program code as a little gift of explanation to future you or somebody else working on the code in the future. They're useful. They are more useful as programs get more complicated, as you might imagine. And I don't tend to remember to have you do it because the apps we're making, at least in practice, are not very complicated. And if you're able to finish something in one sitting, the value of a comment is decreased. But I do want you to do that for this. You only need to do it for functions, and you put them above a function definition. Later on, when we start doing, I have one here, functions with different sort of outputs, like return functions, it will be a lot more useful. But for commenting, a simple thing like this was the Weather Forecaster app. You can just drag out the comment block if you're not into text mode, or you just start with a double slash. Describing what's happening here would be something to this effect of reset, filter, lists, sort, sort main lists for dates that match user input and update screen elements. Okay, that's a simple comment. It's not terribly difficult. Please do it. Where are we? Okay. Element IDs have meaningful descriptive names, and it actually runs no errors in the code. Okay, it's hard for me to grade your work when there's a big red square on the side and I can't even access it. You need to actually make it work. Okay, steps: decide on what app you're going to build, traverse a list from the data set. Picking a data set is critical for this project. And the key is picking a data set, not necessarily one that you are super excited about, although that helps. Picking one that fits the requirements or is easy to achieve the requirements is probably more important. Okay, this doesn't have to be a passion project. It's a technical challenge. Okay, so don't overthink it. And so thinking about how you're going to use something, it's important. Like the first thing you have to do, or you should do when you get to a new data set, is look at what data types the columns are. We've talked about this before. If a column is a string, you're going to have different ways of accessing and filtering than if it's the data set is or are numbers. Okay, with any sort of something like a date. Okay, if the date is a string like it is here, you're going to have to access that differently than if the date is a number like it is here. Okay, I will give you a huge hint that I can't believe they don't give you before for sorting dates that are, well, we'll talk about the Netflix one specifically shortly. Let's get through this. Okay, so you're picking a data set to use, brainstorm ways to use that data set. Those are kind of happening simultaneously. Plan screen layout. I am not making you do the draw your screens and arrows and whatever. I feel like anytime you're designing from scratch, AppLab does such a good job of letting you adjust image elements or design elements like on the fly, and they also tend to evolve as you write your program. This needs to be a drop down. I didn't think about it. A text input actually isn't going to work because the user's never going to type it correctly. So switch it to a drop down. And that just sort of happens organically as the program grows. So I'm scrapping that part. But of course it is, when you are programming, you need to put the design elements into AppLab first so that you can write the code around them. So the design is sort of building that framework. You don't have to make it super pretty and do the colors and button, corner, radius, and what you'd save that for the end, but getting the elements in there, naming them, putting them on the right screens, that sort of thing is critical for before you actually get coding. And then there is also the coding, which the first part actually is planning on the sheet. Okay, choose a data set. What columns are you going to use? How are you going to use them? Okay, probably filtering. Although not necessarily if you're looking for through a long list of things, and or it might be a combination where you like filter all the breeds of dogs that are a certain size and find the one that is the lightest of the big dogs or something like that, where you're filtering and then mapping through or reducing through to a certain from that filtering. But either way, depends what sort of output you're looking for. Okay, skip that paper hand-drawn design phase and start listing how are you going to, what information you're going to keep track of, your variables. Okay, obviously you have lists. You have lists that are the original lists and lists that are filtered lists. Take a pass. There are lists that are filtered lists, original lists, and other variables that go on. Okay, what conditionals? What are you checking for? What's it going to look like in code? What are you looping through? And what are your functions? What are you actually trying to achieve? Okay, so the scoring guidelines, this is technically it's for the written response, which is the other documents, which we will talk about a different day. But this is sort of the way this written response, this document is designed to get you ready for the actual. So I think there's some. For the create task, the project for the exam, where a lot of it is how you are, taking screenshots of your program code to demonstrate that you've achieved or that your program contains certain elements. But we'll talk about that later. And where are we on this? Yeah, so that is the rubric, but it also, like, your written response is going to include screenshots of your program code that include something. You need to have that in your app. So this is sort of like a double level rubric, because you can't demonstrate you have a function definition in your app unless you actually have a function definition in your app. All right, so like I said, the data set that you choose is going to strongly influence what your app is going to look like. Look through them, try to find inspiration. A quick note about the Netflix app or the Netflix data set. So I would say this is the most common one chosen. Just there's people like movies, stuff like that. But, and when I say most common, I don't mean 2/3 of people. I mean like 15%, which is 4 or 5 people per class. But it offers a couple challenges that some of the other ones have to a certain extent. First of all, it's a huge list. Okay, it's a few thousand rows long. And the other issue is that if you're doing some sort of genre sorting, the way that the genre column works, it's a bunch of strings, but the strings are all sort of combinations of words where there are duplicates. Okay, so this one is dramas, international movies, music, and musicals, drama, international movies, romantic movies. These two wouldn't match. Okay, or if you had a drop down, which is probably the only way you can sort a list like this, you would need a drop down entry for every one of these, which is unreasonable. One way to solve this is with the dot includes method, where oh my god, this is so much stuff that I need to get rid of. So if you back this out a bit, give me a second. Okay, so we have our list from this particular one. The Netflix list is, like I said, super long. Let's sort through and let's not do the whole list, but just because it's super long. If genres index I dot includes and then open parentheses, then the string you're looking for, like I'm looking for dramas, then and then close another close parentheses. This is how you would write out that conditional. And when the conditional, whatever you're going to do, we can just console log to have an output. Let's just console log genres index I, which genres index I is the full string. So if we should get an output with a bunch of, yeah. So these are all the indexes, or all the entries that have dramas in it. And so you could make one of the drop downs dramas, and it would return true for anything that had drama in it. Okay, you have to type it in. They got rid of dot includes, and I don't know why, but you can type it in that way. And the other problem for this one is if you did make a drop down, you'd have to go into the design mode and enter in all of the options, at least the ones you want to sort through. It doesn't have to be all of them, but dramas and comedies, or however they comedy, stand-up comedy, whatever, and sort it that way. You don't actually need to have one drop-down entry for each thing, just the ones that you want to be able to sort by. But that dot includes method is awesome. Super useful in this case. This also works for like the year. If it's the year as a string, you can ask, does it include 2018? Where before we were doing a substring, counting back from the end and making a cut substring and checking that, where you can just do dot include. So if we were doing 20 loops through what is it release date is the other one. Let's call it dates, and we'll go through this date added. If dates at index I includes 2008, console log titles at index I, and we'll get all the titles that have should we titles index, give me a second, 20 dates index I. Let's try dates. I'm doing something wrong. Oh, maybe there aren't any for 2008. That would be a reason. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if you're searching by date, or well, really, this one is date added. So if you're sorting by date added, which is a different column than release year, you could use the dot includes. If you were searching by release year, you would just do the double equals because it's a number. So if you were searching release year, it would be if release year at index I double equals 2018, add to the list or whatever. that title. Let's spell it correctly. That's important. And yeah, okay. So like I said, data type is critical for knowing how you are actually going to sort something. Okay, but you don't have to do the Netflix thing, but this list, like I said, offers challenges that other lists will have to some extent. Okay, so go ahead and make a copy of the planning guide. Put your name in the title, please, and get going. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. All right, ready, go.